Hello, English Learner Portal community. This week on our blog, we have our guest, course author, Ruslana Westerlund, sharing some information about the recommended 6 steps of the teaching and learning cycle that leads students to increase their writing proficiency in English. We know writing is always a challenge. We're always looking for new ideas, new ways to think about it, new ways to consider all the ins and outs that may be that key piece that helps our students become more proficient in writing. Ruslana is an author herself of her memoir, Burgers to Borscht, and again, an author of our upcoming course, Writing Across the Disciplines. So take a listen to her tips, her explanation of the 6 steps of the teaching and learning cycle for building writing proficiency. Download the PDF as a summarizer of the 6 steps to help you remember and to also give you a place to take some notes. So enjoy this information from Ruslana.
I will be talking about an Australian pedagogy that is becoming more and more popular in the United States, simply called the teaching and learning cycle. This is a framework for teaching writing explicitly and visibly. It might remind many of you of the gradual release model because it's rooted in the sociocultural theory of learning, where the more knowledgeable other works with an apprentice together. However, the difference in this model is in the explicitness of teaching writing through language, because writing is done through language, not just grammar, not just sentence structure, but a lot of the cohesion and word choice is done through language. So this pedagogy makes all of that extremely explicit for the students. This framework works with all students in K-12, not just English language learners. And I have been using this framework with all students beyond English learners. And it works in all disciplines. This framework has multiple steps that you can see on the screen from 1 to 6. And it gradually prepares students for writing in the disciplines. I'm going to take the time and explain each step at a time. The first one is planning with the end in mind. So if, for example, let's just say we're writing in 3rd, 4th grade or 8th grade, and we have to explain how electricity works. So we need to keep in mind that students will need to learn language of causality, because it's how something works, not just what it is. Often students write steps of how they conducted an experiment. I did this first, and then I did that, and then I did that. And we're like, no, that's not an explanation. Well, we actually haven't taught them the explanation. And therefore, we often end up with the genre that the students are most familiar with or most comfortable with. And recounts, just retelling or rewriting step by step, is kind of a genre that's comfortable for students. Explanations is a genre that really requires a lot more attention. And in my study, I found that the teachers really learned a great deal by understanding what are explanations, how do they work. So in planning with the end in mind phase, you have to be very clear about the genre that arises from the standards and the students' needs. In step 2, this is building knowledge about the topic. I heard from some of you that some of the struggles that your students have in writing is that they have a hard time generating ideas. Well, in the phase building knowledge about the topic, this is where you actually either research the topic, or you talk about it, you read about it, you watch videos, you have experiences, you have experiments. You take several lessons to really, for students to build their field, build their knowledge about the topic that they're researching. Otherwise, if they are producing arguments, they will be unsubstantiated arguments, and we've seen that kind of writing. But really, this in any discipline, in social studies, science, English language arts, if the topic is new, it has to be researched well. And this is something we actually do quite well. So yes, I'm recognizing, I think I'm even seeing a few nods digitally. And so I'm going to acknowledge the fact that this phase is very common and we do it well. However, where the teaching and learning cycle often surprises teachers, and what they find the most challenging and most rewarding if they do it well, is this phase number 3, and then the following one, number 4. So 3 is the text deconstruction. It's basically teacher guides students in reading as a writer to learn about language of text. And if we are focusing on, let's say, explanations again, then we are looking at the whole text structure, and then we're looking at the structure within the text, and we're really showing students how language works in this particular text. Because if you pick up another text, language will work differently in that other text, in that other genre. So you start with the whole text structure down to paragraphs, sentences, transition words, and word choice. In the systemic functional linguistics world where I live, we call it genre, deconstructing the text at the genre level and at the register level. Make sure students have a copy of the text in front of them and guide the deconstruction. Don't just tell them, take a highlighter and highlight what you notice. They will highlight everything. I've seen that, I've seen that many times. Give them a focus and guide them to teach them how language works in this text. More of these examples are going to come in the January course. I really have only 1 hour to cover a lot. Focus on one area at a time in a lesson. Do not show everything in the text in one lesson. They'll never come back. That's too overwhelming. So do one focus for the deconstruction. Then the joint construction is number 4. This is the most difficult and yet the most important, and also the most rewarding if you don't skip it. This stage is often skipped. It's called joint construction. And no, it's not shared pen. I mean, in kindergarten, you can call it shared pen. But joint construction is done at the college level because in college, students enter a whole new set of genres that they have never seen before. So joint construction is that the teacher and student jointly construct a paragraph or a whole text together, discussing, observing, noticing language, and making language choices together. It's not writing down everything they say. It's really negotiating the language that students give you to fit the desired genre and the language of the register that you are seeking in the finished product. Just remember yourself when you were learning a new skill lately. It's much better to do it along with someone, not by yourself. Just writing is definitely the same. You have to do this work together with this apprenticeship kind of model where you're noticing it. And joint construction has to be done multiple times meaningfully and in different contexts and in different genres. The next phase is independent writing, and students, it depends on their grade level, depends on their skill, depends on their age. This stage can be done collaboratively. Luciana de Oliveira, my esteemed mentor, adds a new stage to this called collaborative writing, because often students need more help before they can write on their own. So you know your students, you can adjust. The final stage is an extremely important stage. In it, you review and assess and plan future lessons. In my experience and in my research with teachers, we found that teachers would collect student work and they would grade it, but rarely use that data to determine the next steps for teaching writing. So it was more summative, but the summative results weren't used for formative measure. And it's really like, so do my students still produce spoken language when they write? Do they write and then? So if they do, then maybe I need to teach cohesion and coherence next time. So really taking time to pay attention to, if we deconstructed the text for these language features and we jointly constructed the text for these language features, how did they do in that area? So not marking everything, but looking at the area of focus that you have identified earlier on. So if we're focusing language of causality, did students produce language of causality beyond because and so? Because there is many different ways of showing causality, and we've discovered that with my teachers in the study. And you'd make decisions: what needs to be taught, what needs to be retaught. Okay, so that was a very fast fly through the teaching and learning cycle. I apologize for the speed, but come back in January for more.
As always, thank you for joining us in the blog this week. I hope you found the quick review of the 6 steps of the teaching and learning process for writing across disciplines to be useful and to give you a little insight into things you might try in the upcoming days. I know this was a real quick overview, just touching on each of the steps. If you're interested in more information about the teaching and learning cycle in depth, I would encourage you to consider taking our upcoming course, Writing Across Disciplines, where Ruslana goes into much more depth in the teaching and learning cycle and many other concepts about teaching writing that are based on the research she's been doing over the years. That course begins on January 20th, 2020, 1/20/2020. So check it out and see if it's for you. Again, thanks for joining us. And if you have any needs or questions or topics you'd like us to cover, please reach out and let us know.